Richard Dawkins, The Blind Watchmaker. Why the evidence of evolution reveals a universe without design. The Blind Watchmaker. Chapter 5. The Power and the Archives. The Power and the Archives. In the raining DNA outside, on the bank of the Oxford Canal, at the bottom of my garden is a large willow tree, and it's pumping down its seeds into the air. There is no consistent air movement, and the seeds are dripping upward in all directions from the tree, up and down the canal as far as my binoculars can reach. The water is white with floating cottony flakes, and you can sure that they have carpeted the ground much the same radius in other direction too. The cotton wool is mostly made of cellulose, and it wraps the tiny capsule that contains DNA and the genetic information. The DNA content must be a small proportion of the total, so why did I say that it was raining DNA rather than cellulose? The answer is that it's the DNA that matters. Cellulose fluff, although more bulky, is just a parachute to be discarded. The whole performance, cotton wool, cockins, tree, and wall, is in aid of one thing, and one thing only, the spreading of DNA around the countryside. Not just any DNA, but DNA whole coded character spell out specific instruction for buildings, willow trees that will shed a new generation of downy seeds. Those fluffy specks are literally spreading instruction for making themselves. They are there because their ancestors succeed in doing the same. It's raining instruction out there. It's raining program. It's raining tree growing, fluffy spreading algorithm. That's not a metaphor. It's the plain truth. It couldn't be any plainer if it were raining fluffy disk. It's plain and it's true, but it hasn't long been understood. A few years ago, if you have asked almost any biologist that was special about living things as opposed to non-living things, he would have told you about a special substance called protoplasm. Protoplasm was not like any other substance. It was vital, vibrant, throbbing, pulsating, irritable, a school mommish way of saying responsive. If you took a living body and cut it up into ever smaller pieces, you'd eventually come down to speck of poor protoplasm. At one time in the last century, real-life counterpart of Arthur Conan Doyle's Professor Challenger thought that was the Globogerina ooze at the bottom of the sea was poor protoplasm. When I was a schoolboy, elderly textbook authors still wrote about protoplasm, although by then they really should have known better. Nowadays, we never hear or see the world. It's as dead as phlogiston and the universal atom. There is nothing special about a substance from which living things are made. Living things are a collection of molecules like everything else. What's special is that these molecules are put together in much more complicated pattern than the molecules of non-living things. And this putting together is done by the following programs, set of instruction for how to develop, which the organisms carry around inside themselves. Maybe they do the vibrate and throb and pulsate with irritability and grow with living warmth, but these properties all emerge incidentally. What lies at the heart of every living thing is not a fire, not one breath, not a spark of life. It's information, words, instruction. If you want a metaphor, Don't think of fire and spark and breeze. Think instead of billions of discrete digital characters carved in tablet of crystal. If you want to understand life, don't think about vibrant, swirling gel and O's. Think about information technology, which this that I was hinting in the previous chapter then, when I referred to the Queen Ant as the central data bank. The basic requirement for advanced information technology is some kind of storage medium with a large number of memory locations. Each location must be capable of being in one of discrete number of states. This is true anyway of the digital information technology that now dominates our world of artifice. There is an alternative kind of information technology based upon analog information. The information on an ordinary gramophone record is analog. It's stored in wave grooves. The information on a modern laser disc, often called compact disc, which is PT, because the name is uninformative and also usually mispronounced with the stress on the first syllable, is digital, stored in a series of tiny bits, each of which is either definitely there or definitely not there. There is no half measures. That's the diagnostic feature of the digital system. Its fundamental elements are either definitely in one state or definitely in another state. There is no half measure and no intermediate or compromise. The information technology of the gene is digital. This fact was discovered by Gregor Mendel in the last century, although he wouldn't have put it like that. Mendel showed that we don't blend our inheritance from our the two parents. We receive our inheritance in discrete particles. As far as each particle is concerned, we either inherit it or we don't. Actually, as R. Fisher, one of the founding fathers of the thought now neo-Darwinism, has pointed out, this fact, particulate inheritance has always been staring us in the face every time we think about sex. We inherit attributes from a male or a female parent. Each of us is either male or female, not hermaphrodite. Each new baby born has the approximately equal probability of inheriting maleness or femaleness, but and one baby innate only one of these, and doesn't combine the two. We now know that the same goes for all our particles of inheritance. They don't blend, but remain discrete, separate as they suffer, and suffer their way down the generation. Of course, there is often a powerful appearance of blending in the effect that the genetic unit have on bodies. If a tall person mate with a short person, or a black person with a white person, their offspring are often intermediate. But the appearance of blending applies only to effects on bodies, and is due to the summed small effect of a large number of particles. The particles themselves remain separate and discrete when it comes to being passed on to the next generation. The distinction between blended inheritance and particulate inheritance have been of great importance of the history of revolutionary idea. In Darwin's time, everybody except Mendel, who tucked it away in his monastery, who unfortunately ignored until after his death, thought that inheritance was blending. A Scottish engineer called Fleming Jenkins pointed out the fact, as it was thought to be, a blended inheritance all but ruled out natural selection as a plausible theory of evolution. Ernst may rather unkindly remark the Japanese article based on all usual prejudice and misunderstanding of the physical scientist. Nonetheless, Dain was deeply worried by Japanese argument. It was most colorfully embodied by a parable of a white man shipwrecked on an island inhabited by Negroes. Granting every advantage which we can conceive of white to possess over the native, concede that in a struggle for existence, his chance of a long life will be much superior to that of the native chiefs. Yet from all these admission, there does not follow the conclusion that after a limited or unlimited number of generations, the inheritance of the island will be white. Our civilized hero would probably become king. He would kill great many blacks in the struggle for existence. He would have a great many wives and children, while many of his subjects would live and die as bachelors. A white quality would certainly tend very much to preserve him to a good old age, and yet he would not suffice in any number of generations to turn his subject descendant white. In the first generation, there will be some dozen of intelligent young mulattoes, much superior in average intelligence of the Negroes. We might expect the throne for some generation to be occupied by a more or less yellow king. But can anyone believe that the whole island is gradually acquire a white or even a yellow population, or that the Icelander would acquire the energy, courage, ingenuity, patience, self-control, endurance in picture of which quality our hero killed so many their ancestors and begot so many children. This quality, in fact, which the struggle for existence would select, if it could select anything. Don't distracted by the racist assumption of white superiority. These were as unquestioned in the time of Jenkins and Dine as our specialist assumption of human right, human dignity, and sacredness of human life are unquestioned today. You can rephrase Jenkins' argument in a more neutral analogy. If you mix the white paint and black paint together, when you get a gray paint, when you get is gray paint. If you mix gray paint and gray paint together, you can't reconstruct either the original white or the original black. Mixing paint is not so far from the pre-Mendelian vision of heredity. And even today, popular culture frequently expresses heredity in terms of the mixing of blood. Jenkins' argument is an argument about swamping. As the generations go by, under the assumption of blending inheritance, variation is bound to become swamped. Great and greater uniformity will prevail. Eventually, there will be no variation left for natural selection to work upon. Plausible as this argument must have sounded, it's not only an argument against natural selection. It's more argument against inescapable fact about heredity itself. It manifestly isn't true that variation disappears as the generation go by.